Arden Izunia, Chancellor of Niflheim, at your humble service.
Welcome back to a year of Final Fantasy, and we're in the month of Bahamut still. We're coming up really close to the end, but today we're going to continue our trek of this expanded universe of Final Fantasy 15. The games that we're going to be looking at today are A King's Tale, Monster of the Deep, and A New Empire. And I believe there's one other, but I'll get to that here in a second. There's not a ton to say about all of these, so it's, why not combine them all together? So first off, A King's Tale is something interesting that I recently got into, and I gotta say, I really like this game. A King's Tale is a side-scrolling pixel art kind of game. If you ever played, just a side-scrolling beat-em-up, Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, some games like that, that's basically what this is, except Final Fantasy. And honestly, it's actually probably one of the better beat-em-ups that I've played now that I think of it, and it's quite literally the only kind of this genre in the Final Fantasy world as far as I can think. But anyway, the one thing that's super awesome is that it's free. You can go download it on PlayStation 4 right now. I don't know if it's on Steam yet or not, but it's definitely on the consoles, free. I mean, there's no reason to not get it. And the premise of the game, of course, it's in Final Fantasy 15, but it's going in the past. You play as King Regis when he's younger, and you can experience at least a little bit of the storyline with him, his relationship with Cid that you get alluded to in the actual game, and some of the more other important people in his life at that time being a young king. There's a lot of throwbacks that I won't spoil here, but out of all of these games, it is by far the best and just a fun game to play, just if you want that old school beat 'em up type of game. The art, animation are fantastic. I'd have happily actually paid money for this. I'd have paid $10 maybe, but it's so awesome that it's free. And yeah, great game. Definitely get it if you can. There's, like I said before, no reason not to. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. Next up, we have a strange addition, not necessarily out of nowhere, but it's still weird, is this fishing game called Monster of the Deep, and this actually kind of stems from Noctis's skill in the actual game. Whenever you play it, he can fish. Like, Noctis likes to fish. So this is actually pretty interesting development here, because this game is actually the first game that is in VR for the whole Square Enix company. So it's a big milestone. Of course, this milestone is a first-person fishing game in the Final Fantasy 15 universe, but in virtual reality. So there were so many people clamoring to get this game. I mean, it had to be made, right? Like, Final Fantasy, fishing, first person, how could nobody not want that, right? Well, I guess. It's weird though how it came about, because Square, a couple years back, initially hinted, I believe it was at an E3, obviously that VR would be coming to Final Fantasy 15, and they showed the VR set on Prompto, and we were led to believe that it was going to be some kind of, shooting aspect of the game or something. A lot of people actually at the time thought it was the entire game in VR, and that'd have been super cool. But anyway, at the time that this was revealed, VR was barely just starting to get going, like getting into popular mainstream culture, and people were really lukewarm at best on VR games, and really we're still kind of in that situation. But at this point, indebatably still as of this review, VR is simply a novelty. And VR as a novelty means that most of the games are just, honestly, they're glorified tech demos. So that's why a lot of people, though, got super excited to see this Final Fantasy 15. Maybe if we could be in the world, look around, go and run around and shoot stuff. Either way, it was said that director Masahashi Takizawa reassessed the shooter-based version of this game and decided that shooting mechanics were neither immersive or interesting, those are quotes, and they would take a lot more time to refine into a fun game worthy of release, just a lot of work in general. So thus, it was decided that instead of an awesome first-person shooting game in the world of Final Fantasy 15, we get a fishing simulation game that would provide them a way of immersing the players in the world, much more than apparently an action shooting game can. I think really the big point of this, though, is that it required relatively little time for development as compared to the shooter game that they initially wanted to make, so, that probably played a huge part. Apparently, the developers took a fishing trip with each other to this Yokohama Bay so they could get the quote-unquote authentic feel of what the fishing experience was all about. And they still thought that fishing was more entertaining than a first-person shooter. That's something, I guess. Either way, the game was released on November 21st to lukewarm reviews at best, kind of slightly negative reviews, honestly, but much of the publicity is not super great towards the game, and really I think it's due to an unclear presentation of what this VR project was supposed to be. Like I said, people initially thought it was the entire game, then it changed to a shooting game, now it's a fishing game, and it's whatever, right? Like, not a super great entry into the series, I think we'll all agree on that, but it has to be noted that this is a very important one because, like I said, it's the first Final Fantasy VR experience, let's call it that. So if you really enjoy fishing games and really like Final Fantasy, then this game is absolutely for you. The one person out there that likes that. But anyway, we finally have a new empire, which is a mobile game. Yes, if you clicked off this video, screw mobile games, I don't fault you for that at all. This is a mobile game, and you know what? It's a completely new and original free-to-play mobile game where you build a city and an army, and are locked behind paywalls and have to wait. And all right, let's be fair here. This game's not super great. In fact, it's probably one of the worst games ever. It's a free-to-play game, clearly. Like I said, pay to win behind a time wall, and it's a city building game. If you played a mobile game, chances are that you've played something incredibly similar to this. It was released to fairly poor reviews, saying that it has no identity. All the relationships with actual Final Fantasy XV are serviceable at best, and completely devoid of the game's world and identity at worst, which is most of the time. There's hardly any reason to even continue with this game. So if you've played a mobile city builder, you've played this game. Like I said, even if you haven't actually played this game, you've played this game. It's by far just such a subpar entry, and actually what we're going to talk about next is actually pretty heartbreaking compared to this game. So if you're into this kind of thing, cash grab, Final Fantasy, branding because of money, then go play it. You'll love it, guaranteed. But before I go, for completeness, I'd like to briefly mention a couple more of these spin-offs that we need to talk about. First, we have Justice Monsters 5, which is the arcade pinball game that you can actually play in the proper Final Fantasy XV game itself. It was released on iOS and Android, and honestly, that's all I'm going to say about it. It's a pinball game. You can play it if you have the real game. But really, really interesting, and this is the heartbreaking thing I was talking about, there is a game, or sadly was a game, called King's Knight Wrath of the Dark Dragon, which is a remaster of an NES shooter that was King's Knight. I actually have a soft spot for these shooter kind of games that are really fantasy medieval games, not just like super futuristic airplanes or spaceships or whatever. And what they did here was, for this relatively obscure NES game, they kind of folded it into the Final Fantasy XV universe. I thought that was really cool, a cool way to resurrect a cool game. But what's not awesome is that the game actually is being shut down in June of 2018, here in a few months, because of course it is, right? It's not unprecedented, it's just one in the very long line of lists of mobile games that Square has shut down, sadly just completely losing the game to time. There's no way to really preserve this game or anything like that, so that really kind of sucks. The bad part about it is that it's actually a pretty damn good game, and the fact that this got shut down before the Final Fantasy XV mobile game did is just, I don't even know. It's sad. It's just like, it is now a sad background of my life. All right, guys. So we only have one more video to do about a proper Final Fantasy game. Of course, that is the game of, well, last month. I've taken a little while to get these out, but that is Final Fantasy 15. This is it, guys. It's the last actual gaming video of this series. Afterwards, there are 2 more videos, and after that, we'll close in on the finish line. So as always, until next time, Crystal Warriors, keep on gaming.